Hi, I'm Mark Lynn, and I'm the roommate coach. You're listening to KZZH 96.7 FM in Eureka, California. This will be episode 17 of the Roommate Coach. This episode is Housing Alternatives for the 21st Century, Part 3. Okay, quick correction here. That should be Shared Housing Alternatives for the 21st Century, Part 3. It's the shared housing that creates the need for roommates in the first place, so that kind of makes sense. It's kind of a series within a series as I discuss a variety of shared housing alternatives, but don't despair, the other two episodes in this mini-series, as well as the rest of the episodes, are available on the website. I'll tell you more about that in just a minute here. The motto here at the Roommate Coach is World Peace, one roommate at a time. If you'd like to If you'd like to leave feedback about the motto or anything else for me, you can do that online at theroommatecoach.com using the contact link on the homepage. And you could also leave a voicemail 24/7 at area 707-362-8000. 707-362-8000. Station KZZH has been brought to the air relatively recently, I think it was September of 2016, by Access Humboldt. You can reach them at accesshumboldt.net. In this episode, I'm going to finally get into a little more detail about co-living, one of the major developments in the recent emphasis on shared housing. I actually started to call this episode Doing the Right Thing for the Wrong Reason, but then I decided to stick with my original, maybe more conservative format, since I'm still talking about shared housing alternatives. But I'll explain in just a minute here what I meant by my almost title. I guess I could call that the subtitle for this episode. I'd like to talk a little bit about the significance of all this to my job here, I guess you'd call it, as the roommate coach, as I'm learning more and more about this resurgence of interest in shared housing. When I originally decided to become the roommate coach and to do this whole project aiming at roommate issues and roommate problems, the problems that roommates frequently have with each other was in fact my primary focus. In fact, that's really what I saw myself doing as the roommate coach, and I still do. But my point is I'm seeing a bigger picture now than I did back then. I definitely hope to do my best to help with roommate problems because they will likely continue. But the bigger picture, just as a coach, if you go to a batting coach, for example, and you have a problem with your swing or something like that, a good coach will help you with the problem. But a really good coach will do more than that. Once the problem is solved, or even if you didn't have a problem in the first place, you just wanted to get better, a good coach will see the bigger picture and do everything possible to help you maximize your game completely, whether you've got specific problems or not. And that's what I'm realizing my role here as the roommate coach needs to be. As our world moves into this really complicated economy where there seems to be just less and less of everything to go around for a variety of reasons that are beyond the scope of this show, at least for the time being. The various ways in which we will hopefully still be able to provide our basic needs, the most important of which generally is shelter. Without shelter, it's pretty hard to do much of anything, as we know. These are becoming more and more complicated, and they're changing rapidly, so I'm seeing a larger role for myself as the roommate coach to basically help people to understand just what these varying housing alternatives mean, how they might work, which ones might work well for a given individual, and back to my original idea about problems, what kind of issues might crop up in a given situation, and most importantly, what could be done about anything that might happen. So it's a combination of things. It's trying to make the most of the constantly varying set of choices we have where housing and shelter is concerned, figuring out how to make the best match for any individual based on personality and preferences and experiences and everything else. What works really well for one person might be just awful for another, and vice versa. That's true of many things in life. So that's the bigger picture that I see myself fitting into as the roommate coach. Okay, so co-living. Here is what looks like a pretty succinct definition. This is from a website called opendoor.io. I'll put the links on the show notes on my website on theroommatecoach.com. The quote here says, begin quote, "So what is co-living? As we define it, co-living is a modern form of housing where residents share living space and a set of interests, values, and/or intentions. It's a new take on an old idea, imagined by a millennial generation that values things like openness and collaboration, social networking, and the sharing economy." End quote. And here's another even shorter quote from a fellow named Ryan Chatterton. I found him on the Quora.com website. He lists himself as a co-working industry expert and consultant. He says, quote, "Co-living is addressing the issue that is all too common in city centers, which is not knowing your neighbors." End quote. Now, neither of those may be textbook definitions, and I'm not even sure there is such a thing, but in any case, they are pretty popular definitions. I have seen some version of that kind of statement about co-living on any number of websites so far, and I'm continuing to research. The significant thing about these definitions is that they don't say anything about cost. They don't say anything about saving rent or anything like that. They're talking about community, about building a community, about living in a community rather than just living by yourself in an isolated room. And that seems to be the big deal and the main purpose. Actually, when you think about it, our entire lives are kind of a balancing act between too much companionship and too little. We don't want to be lonely, but at the same time, we don't want to be smothered. We need our own space, and we need time to figure things out. Robert Heinlein, the science fiction author who was popular back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, and I guess he still is, put it very nicely. He said, "Privacy and company are essential, and you can drive someone crazy by depriving them of either." So based on the definition of co-living that we're working with here, it would seem that mankind has perhaps gone a little too far in the let's be alone and let's just have our own private space direction. And now the pendulum is swinging back the other way, and some people, and it seems like it's the younger generation, the millennials, are apparently liking this idea of housing, shared housing, that emphasizes the social aspect rather than just the physical housing itself. Now, to the extent that this is literally the case, I personally think it's a fabulous idea for any number of reasons. And this leads me to what I meant by my subtitle, which is doing the right thing for the wrong reason. I will explain in more detail right after the break. You're listening to The Roommate Coach. My name is Mark Lynn. This is episode 17, and it's part 3 of Shared Housing for the 21st Century. This is KZZH FM 96.7 FM in Eureka, California. The motto here at The Roommate Coach is World Peace, one roommate at a time. We're talking about some of the many shared housing alternatives that are becoming more and more popular as our economy continues to make finding appropriate shelter difficult for more and more people. Shared housing in one form or another, of course, has been around pretty much forever, but it's becoming a lot more of a popular notion, and quite a few new versions are appearing. So this is an obvious thing for the roommate coach, since I'm all about roommates, and if you live in shared housing, then you have roommates. Back to my quick break here. I always like to mention that KZZH has been brought to the air here in Humboldt County by Access Humboldt. You can reach them at accesshumboldt.net. And you can leave feedback for me, the Roommate Coach, at theroommatecoach.com. And you can also leave a voicemail anytime at area 707-362-8000. That's 707-362-8000. Okay, so what do I mean by my subtitle, or my almost title for this segment, of doing the right thing for the wrong reason? I really like the stated purpose of many of the co-living operations, which, as I've said before the break, is the big focus, the big emphasis seems to be on emphasizing connections among the inhabitants of the operations, of the places, the homes, and the social aspect, the community. This, to the extent that this is the case, and I say that because as of now, all of my information is based on what I've read, my research online primarily. I will confirm this as soon as I can with interviews, both with people in the industry, and hopefully I'll be able to get direct interviews with some people that have experienced these different kinds of housing. But there's no reason to think it's not the case. So I think the emphasis on community is a wonderful idea, and I'm a little bit irritated, I guess is the word, or annoyed, that it has taken a slowdown in our economy and a housing crunch, where housing is very difficult to find and very expensive for more and more people and almost unaffordable. That's what I mean by the right thing for the wrong reason, that it kind of seems like the community aspect of life, of housing, should have been more of a focus all along. But now that might just seem like a personal preference, and I guess it is, but it also has implications for what I suspect might be the possible future direction of the housing alternatives, of co-living in particular. I'll discuss some of the implications that I see later on, or perhaps in a future show. But that's probably enough speculation for the time being. For now, what I'll do is describe a possible typical customer, you might say, just the kind of circumstance that might lead an individual to wind up choosing to be involved with a co-housing operation. As it turns out, I can use myself as the hypothetical customer because in many ways I pretty well fit the description of the person I'm describing. I'm talking about someone who gets a job in a big city, a big expensive city, and for those of us living here in Humboldt County, when you think big expensive city, it's easy enough to think San Francisco, since that's the big expensive city to our south. Now for me, I'm past the stage in my life where I'm going to be chucking everything into the car and heading off to a new city for a new job. But at one time, the kind of jobs in San Francisco, the tech work, would have been ideal. I've been a computer guy, freelance IT person for many years now, and I have always loved technology. So in a different version of my life, I could see myself at one point getting involved with someone like Google or Facebook or one of the tech giants down in the Bay Area and getting offered a job. It's certainly possible. So what would I do? Oh, the other thing I should add is I have, like many people in the world, I have always loved San Francisco, even though it's clearly become a bit on the expensive side, which is the point of what I'm talking about here. So what would I do if another version of me, a younger version, let's say, got a job at Google and I needed to show up for work, so I needed a place to live in San Francisco? Well, what I might do is I might fire up Craigslist. That seems like a good place to start. So I'm looking at Craigslist right now, as a matter of fact, and I'm just checking out some of the first things that pop up under the category for SF Bay Area, and this is March 7th, 2017. I'm looking at the apartments and housing rentals section of Craigslist for the San Francisco Bay Area. The first thing I see is 2-bed, 1-bath in Redwood City, $2,600 a month. Then I move on to the next one. I see 1-bed, 1-bath with work alcove, pre-leased today. This is 842 square feet. This is in Oakland downtown, which is not San Francisco, but across the bay. And that's available for only $3,565 a month. So, okay, great. Well, moving on, I'll look at the next one on the list here. City Skyline Views, free Wi-Fi and cable, 6 weeks free. Okay, this is for a 2-bedroom, 1,011 square feet, Soma, south of Market, I guess, South Beach. And that's only $4,300 a month. They just seem to be getting higher and higher the farther I go. Oh, here's one scrolling down a little bit. This is only $4,750, not too far from $5,000 a month, $4,750. 2-bedroom, just over 1,000 square feet in a brand new custom building in Mission Bay. So unless I was already pretty wealthy or anticipating a really big paycheck from Google, which I guess some people do, that would seem a little extreme. So I think the next thing I would do, since I had been listening to the roommate coach and he'd been talking about this thing called co-living, I would take a look at Google, since I was going to work for them. And one of the first things that I might see in the Bay Area would be a company called Common.com. So I'll go to their website and see what they have to offer. Well, it turns out that Common.com has 2 choices in the Bay Area in San Francisco. They have Minna and Valencia. I'm going to click on Minna. And what I see at Minna is I get to live, work, and play in one of San Francisco's most exciting and eclectic neighborhoods, Soma, starting at $2,600 a month. Now, to my way of thinking, haven't been directly involved in these crazy big city prices, so that sounds like a small fortune to me, but it's all relative. $2,600 is actually just a little bit more than half of what one of the other ones I was looking at on Craigslist. So what would I get for, and again, starting at, now That's kind of slippery because if it starts at 2,600, I don't know how high it could go. But that includes amenities such as free on-site laundry, professional weekly cleaning, high-speed Wi-Fi, modern kitchen appliances are all included. It says everything you need to instantly feel at home is included in your membership, including fully furnished rooms, linens, free on-site laundry, every kitchen appliance imaginable, cleaning services, so on and so forth. I won't read the whole thing there. But I guess the bottom line is what I am getting for my $2,600 a month. Well, this is 12-month pricing starting at $2,600. So if I'm understanding this correctly, to qualify for the base price of $2,600, I'd have to come up with $2,600 times 12, which is more than $2,600. But anyway, that's kind of a detail. Again, this is all in comparison to the thousands and thousands that were being offered on Craigslist. I would get a private furnished room, all utilities included, and no extra fees. So without knowing anything else, if that's all I had was this last 10 minutes worth of quick investigation into Craigslist and then Common, I would have to say the Common.com offering would be in the running. Because, bear in mind, the Craigslist are just places that are available. I've been reading about just how difficult it is. Supply and demand makes the world go round. And my understanding is in the big cities such as San Francisco, it's really tough to get approved for a rental. I don't know if it applies to San Francisco. I was reading that in Manhattan, the metric they're using is you have to be able to demonstrate, you have to prove income of 40 to 50 times the monthly rent. Now, that may be different in New York because of rent control and everything. But anyway, like I said, if this is all I had to go on was $2,600 a month, the cool thing about the Common.com, and this is one of the core benefits, as I understand it, of the co-living arrangement, is you just basically move in. You don't have all the aggravation of rounding up roommates, for one thing, and utilities, and maybe having to furnish the place. And I would imagine there is something to go through. There's probably creditworthiness, and in addition to whatever you have to pay up front. But it sounds like it's a lot easier to get started in a co-living setup. And it's also easier to leave. You don't have to commit. I'm pretty sure that many of the rentals have a lease requirement. If I'm just going to work for Google and I don't know if I'm going to like it, I don't know if they're going to like me, I might not want to go through all the aggravation of setting up an apartment, maybe committing to a yearly lease. So just as a beginning exploration, I have to say that even though the numbers involved are kind of shocking to me because I'm from an earlier era, at some point I might tell you folks, well, I'll tell you, I remember one of the first places I rented when I started working, this is a long time ago, I was in Houston. I rented a really nice furnished one-bedroom apartment in a fairly decent neighborhood in Houston. It included a pool, as a matter of fact, air-conditioned. It wasn't luxurious, but it was certainly decent. And I think my rent was $110 a month. So you could sort of tell where I'm coming from and why these numbers sound a bit on the shocking side. But that's what you're dealing with if you are lucky enough to get a really good job offer in a really hot, crowded, I don't mean hot temperature-wise, but by hot I mean hot housing market, hot job market, and exciting place to live like San Francisco. So that's probably a pretty good start into this whole adventure, this whole world of co-living. So like I said, at this stage of the game, after a 10 or 15 minute investigation, I would definitely still be interested. So I think I'll leave it there for this particular episode and go farther into the co-living. Yeah, probably quite a bit more to explore in the co-living arena for next time. Okay, well, that will do it for this episode 17 of The Roommate Coach. I've been calling this one Part 3 of the Shared Housing Alternatives for the 21st Century. This particular one, I got a little bit more in depth about co-living and looked into one of the examples in San Francisco. Anyway, my name is Mark Lynn. I appreciate your listening. This is KZZH 96.7 FM in Eureka, California. KZZH has been brought to the air here in Eureka by Access Humboldt. They are at accesshumboldt.net. The bumper music is called Rollin' at 5. That's by Kevin MacLeod. And let's see what else. Oh yeah, contact. You can contact me. You can give me feedback or complaints, criticism, compliments, anything at theroommatecoach.com. There's a feedback link on the homepage. There's also a KZZH. I think you have to scroll down to the bottom to see the KZZH logo or graphic. There's also a radio choice in the menu. The point there is you can get to prior versions or earlier episodes of the show. They're all listed as YouTube audio. And you could also leave feedback at area 707-362-8000. That's 707-362-8000. Oh, and I almost forgot the motto here at the Roommate Coach. It's world peace, one roommate at a time. And I, for one, think that's really a good idea, and I hope you do too. So thank you so much for listening, and I will look forward to talking to you again real soon.